Hi everyone, welcome back. So are you considering buying your first designer bag? If so, I'd like to share with you my top 5 things to consider when making that first big investment purchase. I also want to share with you my first 3 designer bags that I purchased, my thought processes behind making those purchases, and also some mistakes I've made and learned from along the way, some of which honestly are a little bit embarrassing. But I'm hopeful that this will help you as you decide on your first investment designer bag purchase. If you like this kind of video, please let me know by giving this video a big thumbs up and subscribing below. I'd really appreciate your support. So I've been a handbag lover really my entire life, although I never really got into designer handbags until about 10 to 15 years ago. Back then, there weren't as many resources to do research on designer handbags. YouTube wasn't a big thing back then, and I was pretty clueless as I navigated the designer market. Especially being in my mid to late 20s, I was pretty clueless about these big purchases in general. So I definitely made mistakes when I went on to buy my first designer bags, and I'm hopeful that I can provide you some tips to avoid some of those problems with your purchases. So in terms of my 5 tips, really all of them center around doing research. It's so important to do your research before making such a big purchase. And now we have a lot of references to use. So YouTube is huge for me. So over the past many years, I have now turned to YouTube to guide me in making designer purchases. In fact, I have YouTube to thank for growing my designer bag collection. Other references, of course, are other sites like Fashion File, The RealReal, TradeZ, Poshmark, other companies like that are online sources of buying designer goods. They're great references to get price point information and wear and tear information. And also just online, just doing a quick search online for handbags will also pull up a lot of good information for you. So research is key. You want to go in really educated before buying your first designer bag. So I want to share with you my 5 top tips to consider when buying your first designer bag. The first, of course, is price point. And for me, this was the biggest one. This is my first big purchase that I made on my own. So I was very nervous about it. I definitely had to save up for it. So a lot of times people will consider trying out the fashion house by purchasing an SLG or small leather good first, such as a coin pouch, a card holder, or even a wallet. So for me, I really didn't do that first. I wanted to save that extra money that I would spend on the SLG and put it toward my first handbag. As you probably know, SLGs can be pretty expensive in and of themselves. If you're looking at buying a wallet from one of the large designer fashion houses, it's maybe even a third to a half to even almost equal in price to one of their lower end price point designer bags. So I thought, well, why don't I save that money and put it toward the actual bag itself rather than an SLG. The bag is something I can carry every single day and people will see, and I can style with outfits, versus SLGs, which tend to lay hidden in my bags and only the cashiers see them. I thought that it was a better investment for me to save my money and just put that toward the bag itself. So in terms of price points, I definitely consider a first-time designer bag to be something that's relatively low price for designer market speak, at least. So all of the bags that I picked were less than $1,500. And for me, that was essential. I really didn't see myself spending much more than that, especially for my first designer bag, and I just didn't have the means to do so. So that's something to consider. If you have more flexibility in your budget, of course, you'll have other options in picking your first designer bag. The second thing to consider as you're making your decision is the bag's resale value. So not everybody is concerned about resale value. To be honest, I personally have not resold any of my designer handbags to date. I just am in love with them and decided to keep them so far, at least. But you want to consider this, just as kind of an insurance policy. So some fashion houses have a higher resale value than others, and those in particular, in my opinion, are Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Hermes. The other designer fashion houses don't have quite as good of a resale value. So if that's important to you, especially in making a huge investment for your first designer bag, that's something to definitely consider. You may want to consider one of those brands that tend to hold their value a little bit more. And you can do research on this by going into the pre-love market online and figuring out what their price points are for sales in the pre-love setting versus a brand new bag. And you'll see that the price points for those 3 fashion houses in the pre-love market really aren't that much different than the prices that you'll find in the boutiques, at least for bags that are in excellent condition. The third thing to consider is wear and tear and what type of bag you need for your lifestyle. So if you haven't checked out my Carefree designer bag video, I'll link it down below. But in that video, I talk about bags to look for if you need a Carefree bag. So for instance, moms like myself may need a Carefree bag for obvious reasons. Or if you live in an environment or work in a situation that needs a Carefree bag, such as if you live in a rainy climate, snowy climate, or if you're going to be carrying your bag around a lot during the day in the workplace and want a Carefree bag, those are things to consider and look for. So you want to avoid vachetta leather potentially, you want to avoid light color bags or lambskin bags. Wear and tear also is important to consider in terms of how the bag looks over time. So one way to do your research on wear and tear is again to go into the pre-loved market and look at pictures of the bags that are selling. Do they wear in a certain way that may not be to your liking? What does the corner wear look like? What does the hardware look like? Does it look tarnished? What do the leather trim spots look like on the bags? These are all things that you can learn from in the pre-loved market in terms of selecting your first designer bag and what will suit your needs best. The fourth thing to consider, in my opinion, is versatility. So because this is going to be your first designer bag, in my opinion, I would want it to be very versatile. It's not like I'll be able to buy multiple bags for different occasions, so I want one bag that can really do it all. For instance, you want a bag that you can take to work or school and also transition into the evenings as well for going out. And not a lot of bags can do this, so it's good to consider this as an option. You're putting so much of your hard-earned money into buying this bag that you want to use it. You want to use it in all occasions and in many different settings. So I think this is something to really consider, bags that are very versatile for you. And the fifth thing to consider, in my opinion, prior to buying your bag is how you want to purchase it. So the options are either pre-loved or brand new from the boutique. And I've done both of these, and I think both of them have their pros and cons. For pre-loved market, I think the major pro, of course, is the potential to save some money. So again, if you're interested in a bag from the fashion houses that don't really have good resale value, I think the pre-loved market is major for this. You will be able to save a decent amount of money on bags that don't hold their resale value, and can find bags that are in pretty excellent condition for a good price. So if that's the kind of bag you're looking for, I would suggest going in the pre-loved market to see what they have out there. If you're interested in a bag from a fashion house that does hold their resale value, then as you'll see when you do your research, there really isn't a huge cost benefit, in my opinion, to going the pre-loved market versus buying new from the boutique, especially if you're looking for bags in excellent condition. If you're willing to compromise somewhat on the wear and tear of the bag, you definitely could get a decent deal in the pre-loved market. But if you want a bag that is in decent condition, I think there is less of a difference in terms of price point when going in the pre-loved market for these particular fashion houses. So for my first designer bags, I will show you the three that I picked and why. And I actually did purchase all of them new and in the boutique setting. There are definite benefits to purchasing your bag new from a boutique setting, and that's largely centering around the experience you get. Part of why the price points of these bags are so high is it's a luxury item. So along with that comes the feel of buying a luxury item. So you get that shopper's high, you get to enjoy the luxurious experience of shopping in a boutique, and that's all a part of this. So I think that if you're not able to find a good condition pre-loved bag, I think considering buying your first designer bag new may be appealing to a lot of you. So those are my top 5 things to consider as you're about to make your first designer bag purchase. So now I want to go ahead and share with you my first 3 designer purchases, all of which were purchased around the same time, about 10 to 15 years ago. I want to share with you what I was thinking as I decided to buy them, why I chose these particular ones, how I purchased them, and now in retrospect, would I buy those again? So I hope you'll find this helpful. So the first designer bag that I ever purchased was actually a Burberry tote. It's the Burberry Supernova Check Tote, as you see here. So why I decided to make this my first purchase in the designer world is really, I wanted it because my friend had it. So one of my friends had a similar bag and was carrying it around, and I just thought it was gorgeous, and I really lusted over this Burberry bag. So I decided to just pull the trigger and buy my first Burberry purchase. The price point compared to other fashion houses also was quite a bit less. So I didn't really consider the other fashion houses at this time. I saw the bag on her, I loved it. It's something that I luckily could afford after saving up a bit for. I did not do my research on this bag, however. I just kind of bought it on an impulse. I do think this bag is versatile, so it does meet that checkpoint on my list. I've used it a lot for my work. I traveled with it as well for work. And I think you can use it as an everyday handbag. I think it's a nice medium-sized bag. It's also carefree in terms of the patent leather and also the canvas, so it's very wipeable. It has a nice secure closure option as well. So I think that for all those reasons, it was a decent purchase to consider as your first designer bag. What it doesn't do, however, is hold its resale value. So Burberry is not one of those fashion houses that I think holds its resale value well. So for instance, in making this video, I actually had to go and do my research now to figure out even what this bag is called. I had no idea what this bag was called, so I had to look it up. You'll find that the other more classic bags that hold their resale value, there's no question I know what the names of those bags are. I don't have to look it up. But this one, I had to. So it's one that's not as popular, doesn't hold its resale value. So that's something that I should have probably considered before just making this purchase on a whim. So as I mentioned, I purchased all three of these designer bags around the same time, so I wanted to show each of them to you. So my second one that I purchased a little bit after the Burberry tote was from Gucci. So this is a beautiful Gucci hobo in black leather. I believe it's in the Guccissima line, although again, kind of like the Burberry tote, I had to look it up online because I really didn't have any idea as to what this is called. And the story behind this one is, again, I bought it a little bit on a whim. It was the holiday season. I was in a good festive mood with my husband, then actual fiance, and we were walking the shops. I walked in the store, I saw this bag, and I thought it was beautiful. Gucci was pretty popular as well around that time period. I had seen their bags everywhere and kind of wanted one. So I decided to make this partially my Christmas and birthday gift, but also put in some money for it as well. So that's how this came about. I did purchase it in the actual Gucci boutique, which also was a fun experience and something that I would recommend at some point. But given that this bag does not hold its resale value as well, it's one that if I was going to purchase again, I would consider looking on the pre-loved market for instead of buying in the boutiques. And this bag, embarrassingly enough, I really have not used outside of the house. As much as I loved it, I really didn't use it. And part of it in the beginning was because I was nervous. This was a higher price point than my Burberry bag, and I just didn't want to use it. I was worried that I would damage it, I would get rain on it. Even though with this leather material, I do think that it would be carefree. Back then, again, I didn't do research. I had no idea that this kind of leather would be carefree, such that I was so nervous to lay my hands on this bag. So as you can see here, I actually still have plastic coating on this bag. So the hardware is quite protected because I never used it. And I really regret that, such that I do need to start using it because again, if I tried to resell this, I probably wouldn't get much for it. So I think I might as well use it. It has a lot of sentimental value to it, but really, embarrassingly enough, it's in pristine condition. The inside is beautiful. It has a beautiful Gucci lining. It has a zipper compartment there. I do have what it came with in terms of the actual care booklets, as you can see here. But again, because I didn't do my research, I did not keep the original receipt or other items that came with this bag. I just didn't know that was something I had to do. So again, that would hurt my resale value if I decided to sell this bag again. So these are all things I learned from making this purchase. Nonetheless, I am going to continue to keep this in my collection, and hopefully you'll see me wearing this around one of these days. It's a beautiful bag, but one that I definitely made some mistakes with purchasing on. And my third early designer bag purchase that I made all around the same time as my others was from Louis Vuitton. So it was this classic Speedy 30 in the monogram canvas. So this is just a beautiful bag, as you know. And how I came about getting this was again a little bit on a whim. I was actually on an airplane flying to Vegas for vacation, and I saw a girl carrying this bag in the airplane. and I thought it was just gorgeous. And back then I was really a novice. I was not in the designer world. I had no idea what these bags exactly were, but I thought it was just a beautiful bag. And I fell in love with it. So of course in Vegas, you know, you got to do some shopping. So there are tons of Louis Vuitton stores there. So I convinced my husband that I was going to get this bag. It's really how I went about getting it. And as you can see, I get a lot of my fashion and style inspiration from seeing what other people are carrying and if I like them. That's why YouTube has been such a good thing for me, because I'm able to really see what's out there and get things really described for me. But back when I got this bag, YouTube wasn't a big thing then. So I really relied on just looking at what other people were carrying to determine what would work for me as well. So I am really happy I purchased this bag. Of the 3 early designer bags that I have showed you today, this is the one that I would absolutely repurchase again. So because it's a Louis Vuitton bag in their classic speedy design, this absolutely holds its retail value. In fact, with time, this bag has really appreciated in terms of its price point, such that I really am confident that I would be able to get almost all, if not all, of the money back that I spent on it if I did decide to sell it now, especially because this bag still is in really good condition. So as you probably already know on this Speedy, in the monogram canvas version, there is the vachetta or untreated leather on the handles and on the trim as well. This bag has held up very well, but as you may be able to see, there are some minor watermarks on the vachetta. And that's largely because, again, I didn't really do my research. I didn't know that vachetta leather could show water damage, so there are several occasions where I carried this in the full-on pouring rain and had no idea. So I actually got quite lucky that the vachetta damage really wasn't so bad. But again, it's all about doing your research. Nonetheless, this bag is one that I carried a decent amount when I first got it. I was fortunate enough to get other designer bags as well a few years later, so I tended to carry those as well. So overall, this bag still is in very good condition, but one that, again, I'm very happy I purchased, and I would purchase again. So as you know, it's a huge open hole of a bag, but I do like the 30 size because it has a wide mouth opening. It's perfect if you need to carry a little bit more with you, such as if you're a mom of 4 kids like myself. So it holds a lot. I think it's very versatile, which is another key selling point for me. This is one of the few bags that I have that has a style that can take me from work to evening. I think that it, of course, is very appropriate for a professional daytime setting, but also in the evening, because it's the hand carry satchel style, I do think it does work to go to a casual dinner or evening out. I don't think it's the most dressiest bags, of course, but for just a casual evening out or a dinner, I think it looks really, really great with a lot of outfits. So it's very versatile, it holds a lot, and it holds its resale value. So of all the 3 designer bags that I chose as my early designer bags, this is the one that I would recommend most. So when I first purchased this classic Speedy, they did not have the Speedy bandolier version out. But now that this version exists, and I have this one in the damier bean, I probably would choose this if I had a choice over a classic Speedy as my first designer bag. In terms of price point, it is quite a bit more. This bag currently retails in the United States for a little over $1,000, and this bag is over $1,400. So there is quite a bit of a price difference. However, I think the added versatility makes it well worth it, at least in my book. So if you're unfamiliar with this bag, the bandolier version is referring to this attached option to add a strap. So the strap itself is detachable, however, these rings and extra leather piece on the bag are not. But why I say this bag would be my preference for somebody's first designer handbag is that this bandolier strap adds so much more versatility over the classic Speedy. So it allows different options for carrying the bag. In addition, I would choose the damier bean print potentially over the classic monogram, again because of versatility. So this bag is truly carefree, and that's largely in part due to the color scheme, but also the treated leather trim. Versus the vachetta, as I mentioned, is definitely susceptible to the elements and rain and water spots. And finally, why I would choose this over this classic Speedy I have is the damier bean print. I think overall is more versatile in terms of taking you from the daytime to the evening as well. I think it looks a little more dressy given the color scheme compared to the monogram canvas. So for all these reasons, I think if I had to buy my first designer bag now, with the option of this now available, I would choose this bag. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, sometimes people consider getting small leather goods before buying their first designer bag. In terms of price point, a Louis Vuitton full-size wallet is about the same as this classic Speedy is. So at least in my opinion, if I'm going to invest this kind of money into a designer item, I want to get what I really want. So if I want a true handbag, I would choose that over trying to get an SLG first and then just delaying your handbag purchase all that much longer because you need to save that much longer. So saving up for what you really want, at least in the designer luxury world, I think is really key. We always get tempted to buy something just because we can buy it now. I'm guilty of that time and time again. But when you're making these kind of investments, I think truly listening to yourself and knowing what you really want is important. And along with that, these are just my recommendations on what to look for when buying your first designer bag, but you really want to make purchases based on what you want. Not what I want or what anyone else tells you what you should want, but what you want. You're the one that's putting your hard-earned money into this bag, and you're the one that's going to be carrying this bag. So it's so important that you do what you want to do. These are just my thoughts, and I'm hopeful that these top 5 tips helped you out in terms of deciding on your designer bag. And I'm also hopeful that by my showing you the 3 designer bags that I picked as my first bags helped you as well. And hopefully helped you avoid some of the mistakes that I made in my purchases. So again, if you like this video, please don't forget to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. Otherwise, I'll plan to see you again in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.